This is a brief presentation for those who are new to our agencies and our SAFECOM system. This presentation is aimed at two audiences, those who might submit a SAFECOM as well as those who manage SAFECOMs. It's beneficial for those submitting a SAFECOM to understand the general information and how the information flows and how the SAFECOMs are managed. So let me peel back the curtain and give you a brief overview. I'll cover the basics of our SAFECOM program. I'll talk about who can submit a SAFECOM, how to submit a SAFECOM. I'll cover how to submit a good or effective SAFECOM. I'll give some tips on the SAFECOM web app, which can be used on any smartphone, tablet, or computer. And I'll also cover information about how the SAFECOM is managed after you submit the information. Our SAFECOM system, short for Safety Communique, is designed for individuals to report any condition, observation, act, maintenance problem, or circumstance with personnel and aircraft that has the potential to cause an aviation-related mishap. Anyone can file a SAFECOM. We need to have our employees and contractors attentive of hazards to report these hazards before they cause an accident that may result in the loss of life or damage to property. SAFECOM reporting is a critical component of our safety program. Early identification, correction, and reporting of hazards can save time, money, and most importantly, lives. There is a direct correlation between the reporting of incidents, occurrences, and hazards which might impact our mishap rate. A SAFECOM's sole purpose is accident prevention. It's not intended to fix blame, and it's not intended to be used as negative or disciplinary action against a contractor or an employee. The use of the SAFECOM system for contract evaluation is absolutely prohibited. The SAFECOM system and its database actually fulfills requirements for the Department of the Interior and the U.S. Forest Service. Ownership and voluntary reporting are key indicators of an organization's safety culture. Active hazard reporting is essential for a vibrant safety culture. Having and developing an awareness of these things that may be hazardous and taking ownership of those hazards and communicating them to the organization is what world-class organizations do to reduce accidents. Here's a list of our using agencies. Besides the main users of the Department of the Interior and the U.S. Forest Service, other states and agencies are using it. It's important to note that a SAFECOM submission is not a substitute for correcting the safety concern or the hazard. Communicating the hazard to all is the next step after it has been removed or addressed. Take care to correct an issue, then communicate it for all to see. In the future, the aircraft evidence and accident evidence shall remain in its current state until both the NTSB and OAS, or the United States Forest Service, release it for repair. The SAFECOM system touches a lot of our aviation safety management systems. As I said before, the system helps us comply with policy requirements. It is also a proven system to help us identify hazards and identify trends. It also helps us communicate and share success stories and lessons learned. The system is open to the public, and anyone from employees to vendors or any other aviation users can submit a SAFECOM. As a reminder, go to www.safecom.gov and then select Submit a SAFECOM. You don't need an account or to log in order to use the form to submit a SAFECOM. Here's how the flow works. First of all, you observe an unsafe or a commendable situation. You perform the on-spot corrective action, remove the hazard, and then you file the SAFECOM. The initial SAFECOM with any PII or anything that's personally identified information is reviewed by Bureau Aviation Managers, and that's removed from the public version of the SAFECOM. Bureau management follows up as required to make sure that corrective actions are completed and to sort of verify the situation with the SAFECOM and make sure that if there's any further action required. And then finally, national aviation managers and regional aviation safety managers will release it to the public, and it'll be available to see in a query, or if you have the link, it will link you directly to that SAFECOM record. Just follow the form and put in as much information as you can. Operational control identifies the unit that had operational control of the operation that was being is the subject. Selecting this will allow the SAFECOM to be forwarded to the right organization and the people who should review it. If you put in your email address, you will get a notification when the SAFECOM has been submitted and when it has been made completed and public. So this is a great way for you to be stay on top of the SAFECOM that you submit. Here are some tips to enter a good or really efficient SAFECOM. And remember, enter as much information as possible to paint the picture. Pay attention to the required fields. You can't submit without finishing up the required fields, such as date and state. A lot of the fields are not required, but adding comments to the narrative or the corrective action is key for someone who might read it and benefit from your experience. Operational control identifies the agency, region, and state or unit that had operational control of the mission at the time of the event. These selections determine which organizations will receive the initial notification that a SAFECOM has been entered into the system. You can also add images and PDF documents to further illustrate or document the SAFECOM. Include your email address again if you want to be notified when the SAFECOM is made public. The SAFECOM web application adjusts and is designed to adapt to the screen size of the device you're using. So it will scale if you're using it on a phone, or you'll give a little bit more visual real estate if you're using it on a computer, laptop, or tablet. The application itself will store draft submissions. So if you're interrupted as you're filling out your submission, you can return to it and come back to it afterward. And that's done easily by going into the submit menu and looking for the draft submissions that you have on your device. Now those are stored on the device itself. So if you start on one device and move to another, it's not going to work. You have to return to the same device where you started the draft. If you are a manager, if you're not a manager, there's no need to log in. But as a manager, you can get credentials to log in. Managers will be assigned functional areas to regions, units in order to review those. Managers who are assigned to review and complete will get added by a SAFECOM admin and assigned permissions based on their agency. Manager assigned areas will receive notification via email when a new submission comes in. Here are some tips for login. Use the Chrome or Edge browsers. Internet Explorer doesn't work on this system very well, and you won't have very good luck with it. Navigate to www.safecom.gov. We actually have a redirect on there, so you can omit the www and it'll redirect to safecom.gov. You click on the login link on the upper right hand corner of the screen. This will take you to login.gov. We use login.gov as a third-party government authentication system. It helped us avoid costs of creating one and using a system that was already in existence. It also allows you to manage your password and to control it. So if you need to reset that password, you can do all of that on your side. And we don't have to ask a SAFECOM admin to do that one. So it frees up a little bit of workload. If your default browser is Internet Explorer, the email links that you get that notify you of new SAFECOM submissions will open up in that one and won't necessarily work. So you may have to adjust your default browser in order to take advantage of the links that show up in your email. If you haven't used login.gov before and your first time, you'll want to register and create a login.gov account. This login.gov account email needs to match your agency email address, and it is case sensitive. So you'll need to make sure that it matches exactly the one that you put in or that's entered for you by the SAFECOM admin. Once you get to login.gov and you enter your information, it will return you back to SAFECOM. One issue that we're having right now that is sort of more of a mild annoyance, if you use the government ID function, you will have to click login again. It'll bring you back to this screen and say continue on, and so it just requires you to do another login click and then continue, and then it'll return you to SAFECOM. So what happens after you select the submit button and you send your SAFECOM? The system sends an email notifying those in the agency designated within the operational control agency. These individuals or managers are designated to review the SAFECOM data. The responsible managers check the information for accuracy and include any corrective actions that are indicated that they know about. It's critical to manage SAFECOMs in a timely manner, as the key information gets lost over time and resources involved are often harder to locate later. Managers should include their title and date in the corrective actions in the notes area. Managers also have the responsibility to select categories that best identify the events in the SAFECOM. The categories that we include on that SAFECOM record help for searching later on. SAFECOMs may contain personal identifiable information, PII, subject to the Privacy Act of 1974. As a reminder, the use of SAFECOM is limited to accident prevention purposes within our agencies. And it's important that submissions that are made public do not contain sensitive information or PII. Administrative managers and modify managers are responsible for removing any of the names, tail numbers, company names on SAFECOMs before making them public. Once a SAFECOM is made public, it may be distributed, but only the public version and not from the management side, and of course not with any PII. Don't copy or paste or print or use screen grabs to share information from the original submission from the management side. Remember to sanitize personal information, and depending on the nature of the area, even fire names and base names may be removed. However, it's optional, and it's at the manager's discretion to remove that data. The SAFECOM system uses an extensive list of events, and they're subdivided into categories to capture information on hazards and other situations relevant to the agency and department's accident prevention program. This really aids in search and analyzing the data that is submitted. You can see here's an example of the categories for a particular flight. Might have had a chip light. The categories that would be selected for that: chip light. They had a precautionary landing. The chip was on the transmission, and the pilot did a fantastic job, so that we did a prevention kudos that was available on that particular narrative. Under the resources link on the SAFECOM site, it lists the contact list and the Bureau and Office representatives to answer questions. You can report problems within the SAFECOM.gov website or SAFECOM system to the OAS or Forest Service contacts. Here's our phone numbers for those contacts.